The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. Welcome to Pediatric Perspectives, where we are looking at children's health challenges from a different perspective, one that includes critical thinking, one that's not afraid to give you the honest truth. My guest today, I'm welcoming back Laraine Abbey-Katzev. Laraine, I'm so glad we get to have you back. I know there was a lot you wanted to cover that we didn't get to.
Thank you. Well, I'm very excited about sharing this kind of information because we can really help children. We can rescue our kids. We need to rescue our kids. As you are even more aware than I, the statistics on the health of our children are frightening. I mean, I would say we're on our way to an extinction situation if we don't make a change.
It is absolutely horrifying. You're right. Bobby Kennedy, head of HHS, just recently gave the statistic. I think it was 78% of our children have a chronic condition, at least one chronic condition. I mean, that's almost all kids. That is unthinkable. I mean, thinking back, so you preceded me by a little over a decade, but I remember growing up, there were no chronic conditions. I mean, there would be that rare Downs kid who have, they have a genetic glitch. Other than that, we went through childhood infections, got over them, and we were very healthy. What was your experience growing up?
Same thing. I mean, it was an entirely different world. I never heard of autism as a kid. In the school, we would have, maybe there was in the whole school, you might say there was what we would call a class clown. That would how he would be identified. He was not autistic or behaviorally odd or anything like that. So everything changed, and it got really bad, of course, as we both know, with the 1986 Act, which Barbara Loe Fisher tried valiantly. She said there was no way to not have them do this act, so she tried to mitigate its damage. And she did introduce things that were helpful, but they were not even carried out. There was supposed to be certain actions taken by the pharmaceutical industry that never happened. So
Yep. No, I agree. I was the class clown. And of course, my kids, fast forward to the next generation, they're more affected with sort of, as your son you shared on the last show, that description was very fitting for my kids. Lots of ear infections, significant behavioral issues, ADD, ADHD, impulsivity, the whole bit. And I wasn't feeding them well either. So let's jump to that. The topic of this episode today is, best foods for kids. Let's start with, in summary, what would you promote? And then we'll get into some of the things that you discovered, things that you helped transform basically through nutrition.
Well, basically my bent is to teach parents that they want to feed whole foods to their kids, meaning less processed stuff with long lists of words you don't understand shouldn't be used. It's better to shop the perimeters of the supermarket, frozen food, fresh food. Those aisles down the middle with all the boxes and bottles don't need to have a lot of a lot of products taken from there. They should, if they're going to use grains, it should be whole grains, not white flour. And you know that it's white flour when on the label it just says flour as the ingredient. Sometimes it says wheat flour, but that's not whole wheat. Unless you see the word whole, it isn't.
Parents today, with the fast pace of their lives, too often are going for convenience. And sadly, our world's become so toxic that's not going to cut it. I mean, if you are watching this and you're a parent, and yes, it is hard to balance it all, there's nothing more important than what you put into your child's mouth. And I couldn't agree more. Shop the perimeter. I always start in the produce section, fill up my cart, and then I just pick up the last few little things that I might need.
Yeah, and by the way, I want to mention frozen vegetables are okay. Fresh is better. But if you're talking about convenience factor and ease of doing things, frozen's okay. Canned, no good. The
Right.
enzymes are destroyed by canning, and enzymes are part of the nutrients that are important for us to eat, which you get from raw food. You don't get
Yeah.
it from, canned and bottled and cooked food. So all fruits should be fresh and raw, nothing bottled. Frozen vegetables can be a helpful alternative.
You can buy frozen organic vegetables. That's definitely worth looking for and really prioritizing for sure. So you, in your long career of working with kids and families, you really focused on nutrition as a mechanism for healing a variety of conditions, learning problems, behavioral issues, chronic ailments. What are some of I think you were involved with school programs also.
The school programs had to do with, first was the thing that made me develop Better Food for Better Kids website, and it was originally a foundation. The website, betterfoodforbetterkids.org, details the story also of our school in Bonaire. I have a second home in the Caribbean island of Bonaire. And we have one high school on the island. And the high school, every day the police were coming to this high school because the kids were pulling knives on each other. And the parents were up in arms, and it was all in the newspapers. What is happening here, and how can we fix this? And so I decided to go over to the school and interview a few of the kids. And what I observed was, and I asked them, like, what had you eaten for breakfast? A lot of them were there with no breakfast at all. Many of them were there with soda pop. They have a artificially colored, artificially flavored, and heavily sugared soda drink that they call limonada, but it's not lemonade. Anyway, so they're hepped up on all this sugar and artificial colors, flavors, and then no real food in the stomach. So I went to the school's authorities and I said, look, I think I know what your problem is. And I said, it's what the kids are eating, or in some cases, what they're not eating, no breakfast. So they authorized me to teach some nutrition things and inform to some of the teachers in the school and the guidance counselors. And the teachers started teaching the kids. And then ultimately, they actually created a breakfast program that was a healthy breakfast program. It wasn't, crap. And all the violence went away. There was no more police coming into the school every day. And on the website, Better Food for Better Kids, there's a section on the website that talks about some schools where the Appleton Alternative School, I believe was the name of it. There's a video about that where they introduced a healthy food program, and it eliminated, these behavior, bullying and violence and all of that kind of stuff. And in New York City years ago, there was sort of an experiment done, I guess we'd call it, over 800 schools where they committed to a low sugar, low food additive diet, and they experienced amazing benefits from the kids in terms of academics and as well as behavior. And that is featured somewhere within my website, Better Food for Better Kids. There's videos about it.
That's incredible. It's just almost shocking to me. I mean, I raised a lot of kids. I wasn't as aware as you were. So I didn't do a very good job of promoting organic, natural, whole food, nutrient dense foods. And my kids all had learning challenges, behavior problems, chronic, recurrent infections, ADD, ADHD. And it's like, wow, I could have avoided or significantly reduced most of those conditions, I'm guessing.
Yes, you could have. And an example of that was my son, Eric. My pre-nutrition days, right from the get-go, it was colic, then it was eczema, then it was asthma, and then it was ear infections. Finally, as he got a little older, it was ADHD. The neighbors would come to my door and say, oh, one of them in particular, oh, Eric just hit Susie over the head with his toy truck. And this was a kid who, between these misbehavior type things, he was a pretty good kid. But it was interwoven with all this wildness and craziness. And anyway, long story short, I started looking into the world of nutrition in order to help his asthma, because I had no idea. I mean, I was a head nurse in psychiatry, and I had no idea that food affected behavior. In fact, I learned the term cerebral allergies, which means, a reaction, a behavioral or thought or that type of brain reaction to a food or some kind of substance that the person was intolerant to. And I found out through experiments that my son was food experiments I did with eliminating different foods, which was a big part of my practice. I want to say that for parents to know, 3 main arenas. One of them is looking for toxic substances in the kid, particularly toxic metals. I used to do hair analysis on almost everybody in my practice, and the kids always had a toxic elevation of something: mercury, aluminum, cadmium, lead, whatever. The other aspect that was particularly important, and I did it with all patients and of course with kids, was the elimination of frequently eaten foods, test eliminations. Kids would be taken off of all flour foods, all wheat, for 5 days. Same for milk products. 5 days off of anything from a cow's udder. I looked at what was most common in the person's diet, and particularly something that they seem to almost be addicted to, because we used to use the term allergic addictions. The foods that you crave the most and are constantly eating, unfortunately, sometimes are the implicated problem foods. In the case of my son, he was highly reactive to 3 things. One was sugar, made him really crazy. When we took him off of it, it was a radical change in the kid's behavior, totally radical. Reintroduced it and he was wild again. The other one was wheat, and the third one was onions. And when we got all of those foods out of his diet, everything changed. And of course, I also used vitamins and mineral supplements. And at that time, when I was dealing with my son in the very beginning, I sought out an orthomolecular physician there happened to be one in the Princeton area, which is where we were near at the time. And she had him not only go on megavitamin therapy, but she suggested digestive enzymes. We couldn't get this kid toilet trained until we got him off all those foods. And he always had loose bowels. It was never a formed bowel movement until the first day I gave him those enzymes that doctor recommended. He had his first formed solid bowel movement. So that was the beginning.
Wow. Your story of your son, had he been born later, like in the 80s or 90s or 2000s, especially with the expansion of the vaccine schedule, he would have been in big trouble.
For sure, because I mean, I was very fortunate that he didn't have autism.
And, he had so few vaccines back then, right? I mean, what year was he born?
He was born in 72, and at the time, I want to say we probably had, you would know better maybe, but maybe we had 6.
Polio, DPT, and MMR maybe.
Yeah, probably. And I think they were still doing smallpox at that time. I'm not sure.
They were phasing it out hopefully by then. The DPT that they were using back then was the whole cell, which was very, very hard on kids. Yeah, very toxic on kids. Interesting. If we didn't poison our kids with vaccines and we didn't poison them with the junk food that is called food, I bet 99% of our kids would be healthy.
I totally agree with you. Absolutely. That's why I'm passionate about the fact that we can reverse this, but we've got to get started, because if we don't change the way we're feeding our kids, I like to tell people, if we don't fix our kids' food, we can't fix their health. We are literally built from and run by food. Our bodies and brains are made from the breakdown products of what we eat. And to not pay attention to this is insanity, total insanity. And poor Bobby, who's up, RFK Jr., our Secretary Kennedy, He's up against such powerful forces. The food industry, the pharmaceutical industry, all of whom have no interest in healthy or anything. I mean, they don't want to spend money reformulating their food products, and certainly the whole pharmaceutical arena. They profit by sick people. If everybody was healthy, we wouldn't even need pharmaceuticals. So obviously, it's a threat to these industries. Bobby is a big threat.
Yeah, no, I used to, when I was naive and, right out of medical school, thinking, we're going to go save the world and the pharmaceutical industry is our partner in this. I was pretty naive, not realizing that actually, if you really look at what's happened over the last few decades, the pharmaceutical industry is all about making profit, period. And they profit when kids are chronically ill, or adults for that matter. So if there's anything they can give a prescription for that treats the symptoms but doesn't treat the underlying condition, you've got a lifelong customer.
And vaccines help to promote those lifelong
customers. Sure do. Vaccines destroy the immune system. You end up with autoimmunity, and then for autoimmunity, they've got all these immunosuppressants. Big money maker. You suppress the immune system, what do you get? Infections and cancer. Cancer, huge money maker. The whole thing is a vicious cycle of using us as their ATMs. It's horrible. I wanted you to touch on a few other examples of things you saw transformed by just the nutrition in children. So I think in your book you've got a kid named Jason.
Yes.
You've got Douglas, who's a 3-year-old with autism. You've already shared about asthma. What other examples would you like to share of things that really respond well to nutrition?
Well, there were a couple of things. One of my chapters is called Short Kids, and you can help them grow with zinc and B6. I had a whole bunch of kids. Parents get panicky when a boy is very short. But the more exciting things, I think, were, they're all exciting, of course, especially to the parents of the kids. But Douglas was a 3-year-old with autism. The mom brought him into the office. The kid had no expressive speech. He was toe walking, and he was about 3. Toe walking at that age is a sign of neurological damage. In younger kids, it's normal, younger children. But anyway, so he's toe walking, he's grunting, just some echolalia, which is you just repeat a word or a phrase. It's no context to it. And he didn't look anybody in the eyes. He was like sort of like a little wild animal. So I sat with Mom to get a little bit of a history on what was happening there. And because I always did a toxic metal screen on every patient, but especially every child in the practice, we did a hair analysis on Douglas. And she had mentioned that he was normal initially in the intake interview in the beginning. He was normal at first until around a year of age when things started to change. And she said he had some speech when he was up to that point a little bit. He was age appropriate. He was developing along all the milestones appropriately. So the hair test comes back. What does it say? Kids loaded with mercury, off the chart. Okay, well, you will know, of course, that mercury was in and still is up to in smaller amounts, but was in a lot of vaccines. They took it out. We didn't get rid of autism because autism is more than mercury. But in any event, with this kid, I sat down with the mom and I said, I started reading the sources of mercury. I don't even remember now if that list had vaccines as a source. It might have or it might not have. I don't remember. But what struck Mom, when I read latex paint is a source of mercury, the mom suddenly goes white. She goes, latex paint. So I said, what does that mean to you? So she said, we were painting the apartment. And she said, we took our eyes off of him a little bit, unfortunately. She said he had climbed up onto a counter, which he'd never done before, where we had a paint can that we were using. And he had cookies and he was dipping his cookies
Oh
in the
boy.
paint and eating
Oh
them.
boy.
So he had all this paint in and around his mouth. Well, the parents had the wisdom to call the poison control. And the poison control said if it wasn't oil-based paint, he would be okay. Oil-based paint would be considered an emergency for going to the emergency ward. But anyway, so sure enough, he was okay. Later that day, the next morning, that week, everything was fine. He seemed completely normal. So they forgot all about it. But she said to me, it was around that same period where they were painting the house, the apartment, and that he had started regressing because he was losing, milestones that he'd already accomplished. Of course, I put the kid on different nutrients, but I went and researched the nutrients to help pull mercury out of the system. And I can't say I remember off the top of my head the bulk of those, but I know that selenium was among them, vitamin C, there were a bunch of things. But anyway, I always used a broad spectrum nutritional support program. And then I would use higher doses of certain things or certain additional products, depending on the problem. But in any event, we started this kid on nutrients. Okay, so now the mom comes back for the 3-month, we had one in between, but the 3-month follow-up, it was the astounding. The kid comes running into my office. He's laughing and smiling. There's no toe walking. He's looking me in the eye and he's talking to me in full sentences. Completely normal child.
That is fantastic. I had that same situation happen by taking a child with fairly severe nonverbal autism off of gluten and dairy. And I've had a couple kids go from nonverbal to completely normal. What an awesome example. You didn't even have to do any aggressive chelation. It sounds like you did this with nutrition and supplements.
All nutrition and supplements. And by the way, I also had him do the food eliminations because you're right on. I always did toxic metal screening, food eliminations in kids. It didn't matter what problem they came in for. I wanted everybody to test common foods with a 5-day elimination to see what it might have contributed to the symptoms they came for. And we did it with Douglas as well. I can't say I remember right now the details of that, but you would be 100% correct. You could get rid of all kinds of behavioral symptoms, as I saw hundreds of times in kids, by testing, having them do the eliminations of common foods. It was just amazing, just amazing. It was such a joy. I tell you, when I hear that doctors today are having burnout from in medical practice. I didn't have burnout. I couldn't wait to get to my office.
As you think back, what were the biggest challenges and how did you overcome them? Or for our viewers who maybe have a child with a chronic condition, what are the biggest challenges and how do you overcome those?
Some kids, it was low blood sugar or hypoglycemia. That's one kid that's featured in the Better Food for Better Kids website. I think it's in the success videos. Was a boy who was mouthy and nasty and cursing at people and just generally not a pleasant kid. And he was failing in school and not doing well. And he turned out to be low blood sugar. Sent him for a glucose tolerance test, and we would have them do handwriting samples before they get the sugar for the test. They give them like a sort of like a Coca-Cola syrup type of a thing for the sugars. And we would have the handwriting samples before, during, and after recovery as they monitored the level of glucose in the blood over a 5-hour period. And this kid, I mean, we reproduced every symptom he was doing in life. And of course, addressing that whole situation with appropriate food guidance, nutritional supplements, and so on. He was now a pleasant kid.
Yeah, I remember as a pediatrician taking care of so many kids who were just difficult. They were impulsive, they were mouthy, they were, couldn't learn well, obviously severe ADD, ADHD, if not on the spectrum. And these were tough kids to deal with. I'm so happy to have you on the show because you're you're a reminder for those of us who maybe we've gotten too medicalized in the last few decades, that the basics, getting back to the basics of proper nutrition and avoiding toxins, those two things can be transformative for our children.
It was absolutely transformative. I don't think I ever had a kid I worked with that didn't recover from whatever it was they came in with. And a lot of it was, of course, behavior problems. Not all, some were kids with stomach distress and teenagers with pimples. In fact, I had one interesting one. It was a young girl who had pimples and severe constipation. This girl went to the toilet once a week for a poop. And she had a face full of boils and pimples. And at the time, I had met a person who was called a colon therapist. She did colonic irrigations. I never had heard of that. And when I did, I thought it was the weirdest thing. And I wasn't interested. But when this kid hit my office, I said, you know what? If there was ever a kid I was going to send for colonic irrigations, it has to be this one. And she was also psychotic. She was delusional. She was hallucinating in the office. And anyway, sent her for these colonic irrigations and started her on a whole different diet, also eliminating, testing for reactive foods. The long story short of the whole thing was she wound up clearing the pimples and the boils on the face, was pooping every day after every meal. So she went from 1 poop a week to 21 poops a week. Her psychosis disappeared. It was quite miraculous. And
that is a great story. And you have hundreds of these, if not thousands. Your final thoughts for our viewers who are perhaps either they're starting a family or they're early in that journey and don't have affected children, so they think they're in the clear. And there's the other huge group of parents whose children are struggling with chronic conditions. What's your advice for them?
Well, I think it's to start educating themselves on nutrition. Go read a couple of books, go to a health store and pick out a book to read. And then begin by incorporating vitamin C. It's inexpensive, it's cheap. It gives you a lot of mileage in protecting your child's health, your own health, and in pregnancy too. It's safe, so it'll help prevent a lot of problems. And the main thing is to learn about whole foods nutrition and try to do as much of it. Look, none of us are going to be perfect. I used to have a system in my practice. I called it junk day. And I would tell the parents, look, if you want, you can have a day off, just do whatever it is that you or the kid want to do. And of course, they would see the repercussions. And even older kids would say, you know what, I can't afford to do that junk day this weekend because I have a big test next week. And I don't want to be, dysfunctional. So that was of interest to me, that the junk day wasn't as popular as I thought it would be.
That is good advice, though. Sometimes when you get a new program, it seems overwhelming. So you allow yourself that 1 day a week to just relax a little bit. I like that. Although I will say for our highly affected kids, one of those kids who was autistic and started speaking after getting gluten and dairy out of their diet, went to a family reunion, got a hold of some cookies and lost their speech for a month. I mean, just one junk day, not even a day, one junk bite. Some kids are highly sensitive to some of these things, toxins in foods. Last time I had you on, you had a couple books that you said, these are must-have books. Can you remind us again what those were?
Curing the Incurable. And it's subtitled Vitamin C, Infectious Diseases and Toxins. This book is every health practitioner and every layperson should have this book. The stories are miraculous. It's fun to read because you can't believe the things that can be fixed with, in this case, vitamin C. But that's true really for all nutrients. I mean, just amazing stories. So
and sometimes an older book that's so full of wisdom like that, we have to get back to what was working, right? I mean, when you and I grew up, people were healthy. And we've got to get back to that. So some of this old wisdom that you've shared with us today, I think is vital for folks who are, trying to do it right.
Yeah, Adele Davis's books, I think, are still on the market. I'm pretty sure. I looked this up recently. One of them is called Eat Right to Get Fit, I believe. Anyway, Adele Davis, you could look it up in Amazon, whatever book she has. I started with that, and I would still say those are the most amazing introductory books to the whole world of nutrition and how the different nutrients align with different symptoms. Like vitamin B2, I found very important in eye symptoms and with migraine headaches. B6, very important in behavior problems with kids, along with zinc and, different aspects. And she really brought a lot of that out a zillion years ago,
Yeah.
So you're right.
Well, I appreciate the wisdom you've reminded us of. And my goodness, you are a wealth of information, knowledge, experience. Thank you for sharing it with our viewers. I want to give you the last word. What message of hope can you give to our viewers?
We can fix this. We can fix our kids. We're going to do it. And fortunately, a lot of people are waking up. And the answers are simple. It's better food for better kids.
Thank you, Laraine. Appreciate you very much. Folks, you can find my work at kidsfirstforever.com if you want a coaching session with myself or my partner, Dee Dee. Get the book Vax Facts, but also really dive into nutrition now. Make that your mission. I think Laraine has really challenged us with a very simple proposition, and that is to get informed and start getting back to real, organic, whole food eating. And we can transform our kids' lives and our own. Thanks for watching. Look forward to seeing you next week.
We're live. Okay, tell us your name, please.
My name is Barbie.
Barbie, and you are?
Mazzy.
How old are you?
I'm 14.
Mazzy. That's a sweet name. Is that short for anything?
No.
Okay, nice. All right, how many children do you have?
I have 3.
And you are the
Middle
one. Okay, and then none of them have had any vaccinations?
No, and neither have I.
And you haven't either?
No.
So how old are you?
I'm 41.
And I'm fascinated because they tell us that the unvaccinated are going to die of measles or something. So here's the question. You're alive. Do you have any major illnesses?
No, and I'm not on any medications.
And what's the most ill you've been?
One time when I was 12, I had 2 tick bites at the base of my neck, and I think I got Rocky Mountain spotted fever. So I had a pretty high fever for a few days, and we did a round of antibiotics at the doctor's, and that was probably the sickest I've ever been.
Have you ever had measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox?
I've had chickenpox. I had it. I have the scars to prove it. My little sister, when she was a baby, she got it, and so and when she got it again, I didn't get it that time because I had it when I was 3. Whereas my older sister, she had a little bit of light rash when my younger sister got him. Okay, so I had him once at 3 and survived. No measles. I don't know if I had mumps.
No cancer?
No cancer.
Myocarditis?
No. No.
Paralysis?
No.
Autism?
No. No.
Okay, I can't really think of anything else to say to you. So you're very well.
Yes, I mean, what I kind of want to do is tell my story, and it is a long story. I'll try to keep it
Go for it.
Cliff Notes version.
Take it away.
So usually the adage where it's not true until it happens to you applies, whereas our vaccine injury didn't happen recently for our family. It happened in the 1960s with my aunt, and then my second aunt in the 1970s. So my mom was born first in 1959, and she had a baby sister born like within a year and a half after, and it's kind of a sad story. They gave my grandmother so much medication at time of delivery she couldn't push well, and so they used a very forceful forceps delivery, and the doctors ended up crushing her brain, her skull, and she had a skull fracture, and she died in the hospital like a few days later. So that was my first aunt. So at that time my mom was probably like a year and a half, 2 years old. Okay, so they came home with no baby from the doctor, you know. Fast forward 10 years, my second aunt was born fine, and they took her in for her smallpox inoculation at about 1.5 to 2 years old. And so this is about 1971 or 2. And she had a huge reaction to the smallpox vaccine, where she was in an oxygen tent and she almost died. So at that point, my mom's grandmother, who had had the babies on the farm, natural, she pulled my mother aside, who was about 13 at that time, and said her name out loud. And she said, when you grow up and get married and have kids, you have to go your own way. These doctors are killing people. Look what happened to your first sister, and look what is happening to your second sister. You can't just blindly trust the medical field. So that made a huge impression on my mom. And my second aunt did live. Okay. So my mom, when she grew up and met my dad, she decided to have natural birth. She had my older sister in a birth center. She had my younger sister and I at home, and we weren't vaccinated. So we grew up in the 1980s and 90s with exemptions. So kind of when the whole COVID thing hit, it was like, I have to get an exemption. It's like I grew up with an exemption, and I grew up with kind of some of the stigma of being unvaccinated. And when I was young, we were some of the only people around that were unvaccinated. And people talk, and my parents were crazy and putting us in danger. But my mom knew she was doing the right thing. So that was a gift that my mom did give us.
How are your sisters doing?
Oh, great. They're unvaccinated, and their kids are unvaccinated as well.
Really?
And I mean, no food allergies, no autism, no cancer, no child onset leukemia. I mean, just healthy, robust health. No one's on any medications, the adults or the kids. And so that's kind of like my story growing up. Fast forward to when I meet my husband, because I was always a little bit cautioned to marrying someone or finding someone in the military and in the medical field. So I accidentally fell in love with somebody who was in both. And 3 weeks before I met my husband, he joined up for the Health Practitioner Scholarship and joined the Air Force. And then he went to med school. And so I met him right before he started med school and right after he was commissioned into the Air Force. And that's actually a funny story as well, because we dated long distance for a while, and I had like a set of books I wanted him to read back in the day when people read books. He had books he wanted me to read, and one of the books, I guess we had the conversation about vaccines when we were dating, and I said, well, when I get married and have kids, I'm not going to vaccinate them. And of course he sent me this long email about how like, well, you're wrong, and here's why. And then I was like, well, I'd like you to read a book first. And he's like, well, I'll read your book and I'll shred it. And
what was the book?
This is the book. I actually brought it because, and what's funny is like there's so many more long, thick, amazing books today, but this was all I really had in 2007. So that was
Vaccinations, Deception and Tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
The truth about vaccines and the dangers they pose.
Yeah. And it's a very...
And he wanted to shred it.
Well, he's like, I'm going to read this book. I'm going to rip it apart because I'm right and you're wrong. And I, very gently said, well, I think I might know more about this than you do. And when he got about a quarter of the way through the book, he realized that I did. And what it really did was it made him, for the first time in his life, pause and say, wow, I've really been indoctrinated. I believe a dogma that I can't even defend, even with simple questions from a very small book. And it made him stop and think. And that kind of started his journey in this. And since then, he's done extensive research. And we've lived our life. Because he was fully vaccinated as well as a kid. He'd never met an unvaccinated person until he met me. And then he started med school. So he got married and then he started med school.
So you decided you were going to go for it.
I was going to go for it.
That,
Hey, that's the power of love. And
Right.
And again, it's like he listened, and he wanted the truth wherever it led him.
Okay.
And then he started med school, and I wanted to show you what they're taught. That is the immunology book and the short course they have. I'll give it to you if you want to show it to camera. And those are sampling of his other medical books, if that makes sense. The small skinny book is what they teach new doctors on immunology. and how the immune system works. And the others were just a small sampling of his medical textbooks. I mean, they really don't go over it a lot. It's basically like they say in all the other interviews, here's the schedule and this is when you need to give it. And they're safe and effective. So then he had to do all his military requirements, and he tried to get out of shots. I think after we had our first daughter, he had commissioned officer training, and he had a meningococcal vaccine, and he didn't want to get it, but he had to. And then he was able to get out of all the other vaccines until 2014 when he got, because then he had to pay back years for the Air Force as a flight doc. And he had to get his deployment vaccines.
Not anthrax.
No, he found a way to get out of that, praise God. And he had to get a typhoid vaccine and a yellow fever vaccine, and he had a reaction.
Sorry.
And we spent years like kind of retraining his body to heal itself from all his other injury, okay, and just not taking care of himself for years. And he had a really severe vaccine reaction to the yellow fever vaccine, and that's when we got a medical exemption for him from another doctor in the military, and so we could prove. So then he finished out the rest of his military career with a medical exemption, and he was able to go back to civilian residency with an exemption as well. So he never had to get a flu shot or anything because he had a medical exemption.
Nice.
That doesn't mean people don't talk, you know, and the whole concept of like HIPAA or privacy rights. I mean, we were at a medical banquet and people were on stage chiding or chastising my husband for having a flu vaccine exemption. Like they talked about it at the public dinner. Anyway, I'm just saying
That's
it's
awful.
yeah. So
what about your girls?
these are girls. So they were born kind of in those times, and
Any
they're healthy.
issues?
No. My oldest daughter, who's not here today, she's 15 and she's never been on an antibiotic.
So you had them at home,
I didn't have them at home. They were in the hospital.
and they didn't pressurize you for vitamin K?
Oh, they did. You did. And I guess my advice on that, if you do have to, of course, I recommend having them at home or at a birth center. That wasn't an option for us at the time. I do counsel people never leave your child alone in the hospital. Because you and I both have heard stories where like, well, I let the child leave my site. I looked at my medical records later. A year later, they were vaccinated without me knowing. So I never let them leave my site. Like if my husband and I had to be separated, he had to go with the child at all times. So they haven't had vitamin K or Hep B or anything.
And so, what about your health?
I'm really healthy all the time. Like we get occasional flus and stuff, but they only last for like a few days. Like it's never like long and chronic. I do have, when I was younger, I had like a really bad cough for a long time, and we had like, I'd take pills for it, like not pills, but like little like tablets, and then we found the vitamin C that Suzanne Humphrey recommends, and I haven't had it since. So we do like more natural stuff for getting rid of colds and stuff, but yeah.
Because no one said that unvaccinated children are not going to get sick, right?
Right.
But it's not like terrible. Like I've never had to go to the hospital for like any major illness. So
Do you go to school?
I'm homeschooled, but I will be going to public high school next year.
And how are you doing with your schoolwork?
We're doing really well. I enjoy it a lot. We have lots of fun, but we learn hardcore stuff. I'm doing a science year thing this year, and that's going really well. And my dad, he's really smart, so he helps me with all the science things. So
But you don't have any ADD or ADHD?
no, I don't.
Incredible. Imagine that. And then we've got another one behind us who does not want to be on camera, which is her right. Are you healthy?
Yes.
Yes, she is. She's very healthy.
Mhm.
So, wow. What's your advice then? But here's the problem. The problem is that the young mum of today is filled with fear, either through mainstream television or through going to a pediatrician, a doctor, whatever, into the hospitals, being bullied. I mean, the things we've heard
Okay.
are incredible. What do you say to that young mum?
Well, I say do your research. A lot of my cousins now, I have about 25 first cousins, and a lot of my cousins now today have kids that are unvaccinated. All right. So when my first cousin who wasn't going to vaccinate, her name is Natalie, I said, you better do your research, because whether you vaccinate or not, you're going to have to defend your choice. So please do your research, do the reading, get the books, make sure you're strong in what you believe. And then be ready for the first time the kid gets sick, because you can't go run to the medical professionals to save your kid every time. If it's something you can treat at home, you got to be ready. Because if you take a baby in and it's 2-3 months old and it's sick for the first time and they haven't had any vaccines, you're going to get both barrels at the medical clinic, and they're going to want to do a spinal tap. So make sure that you can handle it calmly at home. I usually print out Dr. Plavetsky's little sheets about like what to do when your child has a fever, and what to do with an earache, and I give those to new parents that are going to go this route.
Because here's the thing, what are you afraid of is what I would say. You're afraid that your child's going to get measles and become deaf or die of whatever, and you are living proof that unvaccinated children are strong, healthy, robust, and they may well get measles, they may well get chickenpox.
Yes. What I actually have found, and my husband did want me to talk about that, in Suzanne Humphrey's book, Dissolving Illusions, she has a great chapter on the pertussis vaccine, whooping cough, and the whole concept of original antigenetic sin, and how vaccinated mothers, they've never really built up a good immunity through their breast milk to actual pertussis, or all these things that you vaccinate for. So the first child, when it's born, a lot of times they don't have the immunity passed down, because it's been interrupted from all the vaccines that the mother's got. So with my cousin, like her child, she called my husband up and like had photos. Her child had full-blown mumps, like she didn't know what it was, and so he told her how to treat it at home, and everything dissipated. But like basically it's like the first child has to have the actual immune response of it occurring naturally, and then the mother gets immunity for the first time really, and that child does, and then the other children that are born later, since the mother is exposed to it naturally, she can pass that on now to her children. It's really phenomenal. And after reading in the book, then we like saw it right away with my cousins that aren't vaccinating, the second generation. It's pretty fascinating. So I mean, I guess what I say to parents is like, don't panic, please get educated, and call someone you can trust and get educated yourself, and don't rush to the hospital if you don't need to. If it is an emergency, of course, but if it's not, try to take care of it yourself.
Brilliant advice. Your mum is amazing, isn't she?
Yes, she is. So is my dad.
And your dad's an emergency room doctor now?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We call him a rogue doctor, since he doesn't go along with all the like COVID protocol stuff, and then he doesn't endorse vaccines either. So.
Well, it's a safe feeling to know your dad is somewhere in one of those emergency rooms for those that have to go in.
Mm-hmm.
Good doctors
Yes.
planted everywhere.
Yes.
And I don't know, it hasn't been easy for him to be out there.
Yeah.
But
He almost lost his job during COVID, and it was kind of, I wouldn't say scary, but it was definitely tense.
the hospital where he was working, they wanted 95% compliance of vaccine uptake for the COVID shot. And they reached it, except they had to fire people. And even with the medical exemption, once the health workers mandate came in, he had to, even with the medical exemption, he had to submit to weekly dry swab testing in order to keep his job. So there was a time there for about almost a year where we thought he might lose his job. And then we worried that, well, where is he going to get rehired? Because it's harder to fire someone with an exemption than to like hire someone with an exemption. If they don't want to hire you, even as a physician, they don't have to if you have an exemption. So
Tough times. What do you want to be when you get older?
I want to be a dental hygienist. So there's a school that I want to go to in Coeur d'Alene. So yeah, I might have to get exemptions for that, but that's what I want to do.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, thank you for this interview. Very inspiring and uplifting. We needed that.
okay, good.
Anything else you want to add before I close this out?
Just
No.
don't when your kids get sick, just don't freak out, and like just let them, the human body is so complex, and God gave you such a wonderful immune system. Just let it run its course, and
Thank you. Great advice.